having a good time learning stuff?
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, this is kind of like me going to a medical conference. When I go to medical conferences, I'm usually at the back or in the front. I'm there to learn something, and I can tell you that the people that have already spoken today have been fantastic. They are of the caliber that I would expect to see at a medical conference. So let's give them all a round of applause. And I hope also that what I have to tell you is going to fit and tie some of the things that they've all said together. We didn't get all together and put things. We didn't compare notes. So let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Dr. Jeff Wright. I am a family physician. I'm a naturopathic physician. I've been practicing in Provo, Utah for the last 12 years. I specialize in family practice, but many of the things that I do is I see people who have been many other places and have been unable to find solutions to their problems. So I see people with all the hard stuff. So that's the easiest way to say it. Also, professionally speaking, I am on my naturopathic licensing board. That's the licensing board that licenses my profession for the state of Utah. And I'm also currently serving on the Controlled Substance Advisory Board, which advises the state, our state leaders on controlled substances and which things we should control more and which things we should control less. So I have a profound reverence for the human body. I am amazed at what the human body can do, and I believe that our bodies are designed to heal themselves if we treat them properly and give them the proper nutrients that they deserve. I also use nutritional supplements in my practice. I also use medications. Now, I like to make a little disclaimer at the very beginning saying that in this industry, in the industry of nutrition, lots of people use nutritional supplements, and lots of people say, well, drugs are great and nutritional supplements are great. Well, I like to make the distinction right now that drugs are things that are, at least in this country, are things that have been approved by the FDA to treat XYZ disease. And the disease that they treat is something that the companies that make these drugs have spend a lot of time and research and money to prove that it does that thing. So if you have high blood pressure, you can take a blood pressure medication that's going to lower your blood pressure. Nutrients or nutritional supplements are things that help your body to add health to your body, but they don't necessarily treat a disease. So if you have high blood pressure and you're deficient in something, your body might just lower the blood pressure based on that supplement, but that supplement may or may not lower that blood pressure. So therefore, there is a difference between the two. So I find people that when they come to my office, they typically are, I can usually tell what they've been eating for a long time because their long-term diet will show up in their skin, it will show up in their liver, in their hair, and it'll show up in levels of inflammation. It'll show up in symptoms. So the first thing I would start with is nutrition. Well, we all talk about nutrition, but let me just give you my philosophy on what nutrition is. Obviously, nutrition is macronutrients and micronutrients, things like protein and fat and amino acids and carbohydrates. Those are necessary for life. If you don't have these, you're not going to live very long. But I also like to focus on micronutrients. And when people talk to me and I talk to them about nutrition, what things they ought to be eating, I always give them some advisement on what they should eat. For example, I want people to eat color-rich foods. I want people to eat whole foods. So if I'm talking about nutrition, I'm not just talking about X number of carbs versus X number of protein, because you can get that virtually anywhere, and it may or may not be good for you. But I want people to eat whole foods, quality foods. So in this country, we have an organic standard. In other countries, you don't have that because you have a better food supply in a lot of areas. And some worse food supplies. But I want people to eat food or a diet based on whole foods. That means it's minimally processed. It means that generally speaking, it's not something that you can open up from a package. It's generally something that is not white. And so I want it to be colorful, nutrient-dense foods. What I want to spend my time on today isn't that. What I want to spend my time on today is the other stuff that's in food. It's the non-essential nutrients. These are the things that give you the quality of life. And they give you longevity, and they help to turn things on and turn things off so you can live for a long time and be really healthy. So, a phytonutrient. A phytonutrient is something, and some of the other doctors before me, you mentioned phytonutrients. A phytonutrient is something that is going to have it's a bioactive plant-derived compound associated with positive health effects. So that's for all you squares and triangles. For all you circles and squiggles, by the way, I'm a squiggle. So I just learned how to talk square and triangle as well. But for all of you squiggles and circles out there, basically that means that's something in your food that makes you better, that gives you positive health effects. So some examples of these are things like carotenoids. Carotenoids are compounds that are precursors to vitamin A. There are actually numerous of them. They're found in oranges and reds, and found in things like carrots and peppers. Things like phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogens are found in things like soy, and they are things that augment or help your body to function a little bit better in the endocrine system. Things like glucosinolates. Glucosinolates are found in broccoli and cabbage and kale and cruciferous vegetables. These are things that are touted and being researched in the research as things that might be anti-cancer. And mostly it's because they help the body to detoxify endocrine things which can lead to cancer. And flavonoids. Flavonoids are bright colors. And if you see my picture, there's lots of color in this picture. There's the reds, the greens, the blues, the purples. The flavonoids are the color compound that's in these foods. And the thing about flavonoids is they are very commonly anti-inflammatory. Well, to get a little bit more specific, the phytonutrients I want to focus on are found in some plants that you all know and love, and a few that you're probably just learning about. But I want to focus on these things because they are anti-inflammatory in nature. And if you look at inflammation, inflammation is actually the cause of every chronic disease. And if it's not the cause of every chronic disease, it is at the core root of every chronic disease. And so if you want to be healthy long term, what are you going to get? If you figure you're getting enough birthdays, you get old enough, you're eventually going to get a chronic disease. Unless, of course, you don't. And if you eat right, hopefully you can avoid those chronic diseases. So inflammation is the cause of chronic disease. Well, inflammation can be a good and a bad thing. And so I like to look at inflammation as a good and a bad thing and find out the cause of inflammation. So there are basically three primary causes of inflammation. One of them is infection. The second one is trauma. And the third one is some sort of chemical irritant. So all of these can irritate your body in some way. Now, if you inflame yourself, you're going to have either an acute infection or inflammation, or you're going to have a chronic or low systemic inflammation. So I figured, these are all smart people. Let me give them some facts, hopefully in a way that you squiggles and circles can remember it. So the first difference between acute and chronic inflammation is that acute inflammation is going to be sudden. For example, you slip on the ice and you hurt yourself. That's sudden, you can tell. Chronic inflammation is going to be something that's more persistent. Something like arthritis. You don't know when and where it started. You don't know whether it's going to be good or bad. It might be better or worse today, but it's going to be there always. Inflammation is also, on the acute side, it's going to be hot, red, swollen, and painful. If you grab a hot pan, you're going to get burned, and it's going to turn hot, red, swollen, and painful. But on the other side, if you have a subdued and more insidious thing, this is going to be like something like diabetes. Diabetes, you might not feel the symptoms for the first while you have it. Later on, you're going to have a lot of symptoms, but at the beginning, you might not feel anything. But it's subdued and it's insidious. The next is, acute inflammation is abrupt and well-defined. And this might be something like shingles. It comes on pretty quickly, it's abrupt. You can certainly tell. And it burns, it's hot, but it's not necessarily swollen and hot. Whereas something that would be vague would be maybe fibromyalgia. It's vague, but it can be intense as well. But it's chronic and it's going to get better and worse. Also, aspects of inflammation, you're going to get phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is a fancy way of saying your body sent into the demolition crew to clean up the mess that you just made. And anytime you want to build something in your body or build something on land, you want to, prepare the environment so that you can build a nice solid foundation. The body's no different, so it sends in a bunch of cells to clean up the mess that you created with inflammation, and then your body can promote and repair the tissue. And so acute inflammation is always going to promote healing. Chronic inflammation is going to send in the demolition crew to destroy and repair, but it's not going to end with complete tissue repair. So you've always got this smoldering fire going on. The next point is acute inflammation is going to be short-lived and self-limiting. And chronic inflammation is going to be long and indefinite. And there is definitely a difference between the two. Now, when it comes to both of them, if I can give you I remember I promised all you squiggles and circles I was going to give you an idea of what acute inflammation looks like. That's what acute inflammation looks like. Everybody's probably hit their thumb with a hammer, skinned their knee. It gets hot, it's red, it hurts, and it's swollen. It goes away soon enough. Chronic inflammation is more like your fibromyalgia, where it hurts, but it hurts everywhere, but it's nondescript. So I think when people come into my office, if I can find the cause of their inflammation, whether it's acute or chronic, then I try to help them find things in their food that will help to calm down that inflammation. And phytonutrients are my favorite things to look into. So let's talk about some favorites. This one I learned about 6 months ago, black cumin seed. It's a pretty powerful anti-inflammatory.
6 months ago.
Because it has phytonutrients in it. And if you look online, you'll find about just under 700 studies on some of the compounds in black cumin seed. And you'll notice that there's lots of things that it does. You can read the list. There's a lot more that it does. You've seen other people discuss black cumin today. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, the black cumin seed, is it is a pretty powerful anti-inflammatory and antioxidant. Specifically speaking, if you look at the research, there's these chemical names called things like NF-kappa B. Now, anybody who studied biochemistry probably knows what NF-kappa B is. But it is a major inflammatory pathway that turns on your DNA to actually help you to be inflamed. It's a good thing if you're trying to repair something acute, not so great if you have something on chronic. Also in the literature, black cumin actually helps to improve liver detoxification. And it also has 100 identified chemical compounds. And I always like to think of the identified. That means there might be other things in there that we haven't identified yet that might do a whole lot of good. Another thing that I found that black cumin does is it actually helps to raise serotonin. Now, there's actually medications that are designed to raise your serotonin. They're called SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Well, black cumin had some effects that were similar in form to these SSRIs. They also, they were testing rats, and they found that stressed rats actually had more serotonin, and they actually improved their serotonin turnover rate, which means that the stressed rats weren't as stressed. So let's talk about another one, black raspberry seed. Black raspberries taste good. We grow them here in Utah. There's also a lot of research in black raspberries. They also are anti-inflammatory. They also help improve the brain. They also help with lipid or cholesterol metabolism. They also help with blood sugar and help regulate and help with blood flow. And they also help with allergies. Well, more specifically, they actually help to reduce ultraviolet radiation damage to the skin. There's actually a study out there that said that if you put black raspberries on your skin after a sunburn, it'll actually help to minimize the damage that you just did. Black raspberries also seem to help repair intestinal damage, and they also seem to be a liver antioxidant. The next one, Chardonnay grapeseed. We've talked about this one earlier today as well. Chardonnay grapeseed, there's a whole lot of research studies on Chardonnay grapes and grapeseed in general. It also is an anti-inflammatory. It also is an antioxidant. There's research out there where they're looking into whether or not it can help delay Alzheimer's. And personally in my office, I've been using it for about a decade for helping with connective tissue issues and skin issues. Now, a very important thing is it's also an aromatase inhibitor. Now, they don't know what it is in there that seems to be the aromatase inhibitor, but it does seem to slow down the action of an enzyme called aromatase. And aromatase is an enzyme, which we'll get there for all of you squares and triangles, of what specifically it is, but for the rest of us, it actually helps to protect the endocrine systems in men and women. And so if I were to show you a picture of cholesterol metabolism, up at the top you see cholesterol. Cholesterol, this is the thing that is in the compound, or this is the stuff that's in our LDL cholesterol that gets moved from place to place that's important for our bodies. Well, it is the backbone of this compound called testosterone, which you all have probably heard of. We men like our testosterone. You women, if you get too much testosterone, you don't like that because it makes you grow hair in places it doesn't belong. It then gets turned into estrogen. Now, the thing that turns it into estrogen is aromatase. So if you make that and modulate that, for you men, you won't be making estrogen, which makes you have a higher voice and other problem changes for us all. It also makes your hair grow out. For you women, because it modulates it, it helps your body to metabolize a little bit better. It helps to protect your endocrine tissues. So the next seed that I want to talk about is an old favorite of mine, an old favorite. I would say, you might say it's an old friend of mine. Because in my practice, and long before I even started practicing medicine while I was studying herbs, this was my go-to herb if I wanted to do anything in the liver. Milk thistle. Milk thistle is everywhere in our state of Utah. If you go in other states in our country, I'm sure you'll find milk thistle. I'm sure if you go in other places in the world, you'll find milk thistle. Milk thistle, if you can see the picture, is that beautiful prickly purple plant that grows out in fields. There is 750 plus studies in PubMed if you want to research it, and it's studied for as an anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial. That one actually just recently learned. They're using it as an anti-cancer, though it doesn't kill cancer, it just helps the body to work better so the body can clean itself up, and it also protects tissues, specifically the brain, the liver, the kidneys. Now specifically, milk thistle has a compound in it called silymarin. And silymarin actually is a very powerful liver protector. It protects the liver because of cytokines that might induce NF-kappa B. There's that thing again, there's that chemical again. But NF-kappa B induces inflammation in the body, and this actually blocks cytokines. Now, can I just see a raise of hands or a clap of your hands? How many people have experienced the flu or know someone who's experienced the flu? Has everybody experienced something like that? Not so much fun, I know. However, the reason why you feel bad when you have the flu is not because you have a virus. You feel bad because you have a virus that your body has recognized is now making a whole bunch of cytokines so that you can kill it. And those cytokines are going to make you feel terrible. So those cytokines actually create inflammation, or are part of the inflammatory cascade, and those are the things that help your body to go out and kill cells and go and kill the virus. So if you have protection from those cytokines, milk thistle is one of those things that can do that. It also helps to attenuate oxidative damage that also improves apoptosis in the liver cells. It also helps to protect the liver against mushroom poisoning and alcohol poisoning. I knew about this herb when I was going into medical school, but in one of my courses in pathology, we were talking about liver failure and liver poisoning. Liver poisoning such as the kind that you get if you eat the wrong mushroom. And a case was brought up in our school. The pathology professor discussed how there was a patient who had gone and collected the wrong kind of mushrooms and eaten the wrong kind of mushrooms and was in fulminant liver failure. And they had called these specialists on what else can we do, because every known medicine they'd used hadn't worked. They said, what else can we do? And silybum, or silymarin, or milk thistle, was the plant that they used to help to extend this person's life. It also has been used and researched for helping to improve the survival rate of patients with cirrhosis. Now, it didn't lengthen it by very long. Cirrhosis is liver failure, but it actually helped to improve and lengthen their life a little bit. The next one is another favorite of mine, cranberries. Cranberries have been used, I've been using them in my practice for 10 years, 12 years, for all things bladder. So if somebody's got a bladder infection, I can usually have somebody go get some cranberry extract. But I want them to eat the real cranberry extract, not the sweet stuff, because the sweet stuff doesn't work very well. But the actual cranberries actually has been really helpful for urinary tract infections. It's also an antioxidant. It also seems to help with a lot of other things like heart disease and insulin sensitivity. But as you can see, there's a lot of essential fats in there. And as Dr. Peskin earlier today, Professor Peskin earlier today discussed the parent essential oils, these parent essential oils are also in the cranberry seed. Cranberry seed has also been being used and researched for improving insulin sensitivity. Well, insulin sensitivity happens in people who are diabetics or non-diabetics or pre-diabetes. It also is helpful for intestinal inflammation. It is also helpful for improving oxidative stress. The next plant, another one of my long-term favorites, is dandelion. Can I see here by a clap how many people have dandelions growing in the area? So I had an old herbalist that was of the belief that, she said the old herbalist always felt that the plant that we need is the one that will grow near us. We don't have to help it, it'll grow anyway. And when I look around and see how many people have dandelions in their yard, even the people who spray their yards to kill the dandelions, we all have dandelions growing in our yard. So my house, we dig them up and eat them. My neighbor's house, they just spray. I find them, they actually taste pretty good if you ever want to go dig one up. And you can eat the leaves, you can eat the flower, you can eat the stem, you can eat the root. But there's a lot of studies on dandelion, and you can look them up in PubMed. There's 500 plus studies in PubMed, and that's where I get most of my information, because there's a lot of research there. And the dandelion root is something I've used for a long time for the liver. Now it's interesting because the dandelion leaf has different properties. The dandelion root seems to protect and help the liver. Dandelion leaf seems to help and protect the kidneys. If you take them both, you've got two major detoxification organs that you can help to support. Also, the leaf and the root are very high in trace minerals, so you're actually going to help your feet to feed your body. Dandelion. The next one is chlorella. Now, chlorella is a blue-green algae that lives at the bottom of the food chain. If you want to know what the bottom of the food chain is basically everything eats chlorella. But the interesting thing about chlorella is there's a lot of studies on it, but that's not the interesting thing. The interesting thing is because it's at the bottom of the food chain, it has to survive. Imagine that. And it has to survive in the soup of whatever it happens to live in. So if it happens to live in chemicals or heavy metals or something else, it'll survive there just fine. It'll actually hold on to those, and its DNA will adapt so that it can live in the chlorella. So that it can live in that soup. Now, it's very rich in vitamins and minerals. It's very, very rich in protein. It is one of the only plant-based sources of B12. B12 is necessary for brain function. It's also rich in chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is good for all kinds of things. Chlorophyll is a source of magnesium. It also assists the liver in functioning better. It's also helpful for giving the body the protein it needs for wound healing so that you can repair tissue. It's also, well, nice for helping with bad breath. So, to kind of sum things up, I wanted to I've given you about a lot of research, and if you all want the studies, you're welcome to come and find me afterward and give me your information, and I can email them to you. I wanted to give you an idea of a picture of how the inflammatory response works. So you've got your little guy here, and something bad happens to you and you hurt. You either have a chronic inflammatory response or an acute inflammatory response, but you stimulate, when that injury happens, you stimulate NF-kappa B, which then turns on your DNA. Your DNA turns on or makes more of these COX enzymes and sends the fat that other people have talked about today, sends the fat down the right or the wrong inflammatory cascade, and you get inflammation. That looks like pain or chronic disease. So what do you do about that? Thing I always recommend is eat good food. If you eat good food, you're going to turn down that inflammatory response. Number one, you're going to help the body repair itself. Then you're going to turn down the NF-kappa B, which is going to signal to the DNA, stop that. The DNA is going to stop making inflammation or stop sending the signal, and what do you get? You get recovery. You get better. So to sum it up, inflammation is important. It's necessary for us to heal. But too much inflammation becomes a bad thing and makes us all, well, sick and decrepit and feeling just downright lousy. So I encourage you to care for your core, strengthen your soul, and always, always, always dance in the rain. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please.